Good morning. We're listing over this way a little bit. I wonder what that's all about. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Greater Naples. My name is Tony Fisher. I am grateful to serve this congregation as its minister. And this morning, as I have done in the past, I just want to lift up our incredible staff, all those folks who work for you and for the mission of this congregation, starting with our congregational administrator, Anna Riazzi, our sexton, David Bosworth, our director of religious education, who is unwell this morning and at home, Stephanie St. John, Abby and Sean Allison, our music co-directors. Sean is away today at an event where some of his compositions are being played, and he's there to perform and hopefully to receive tremendous accolades for all that work. Dan Goodsit in the AV closet, and Georgia Hopeful, who's sort of holding the fort down in religious education wing. Thanks to all of these folks who really do a great job for our congregation. I'm also very grateful for our worship associate this morning, Catherine Costello, who I invite up to the dais to continue this welcome for you.
So it's April 30th. All my years in education, there are always two highlighted dates on my calendar. It was the first day of school in September and the last day of school in June. But since I moved to Florida, there are two other headline dates on my calendar. One is November 1st, when high season starts, and then there's May 1st when the low season kind of starts. So I'm kind of feeling like we're ticking on our axis here today because tomorrow's May 1st. I like both high season and low season for different reasons. But I would like to say a special hello to anyone in the congregation who has already left us for parts north and may be watching us. And isn't that nice to know that we're still connected? And good morning to everybody here inside and outside. And as you know, because you hear us say it over and over again, because it's so important, we are a welcoming congregation, freely seeking intellectual and spiritual growth. We strive to create a larger community of peace, justice, and love. Here we learn and grow together and try to live our lives, our values out in public, not just inside here. And now let's take a deep breath and settle ourselves into this time of worship with the morning's prelude.
Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the verities and realities of your existence, the bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day. Let's join together in the chalice lighting response that you'll find in your order of service or on the screen. Each day the first day, each day a life. Each morning we must hold out the chalice of our being to receive, to carry, and to give back. And let's rise as you are willing and able to join in our opening hymn, number 346 in the gray hymnal. The words will also be on your screen. Come, sing a song with me. Come, sing a song with me. Come, sing a song with me. Come, sing a song with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come, dream a dream with me. Come, dream a dream with me. Come, dream a dream with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come, walk in rain with me. Come, walk in rain with me. Come, walk in rain with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come, sing a song with me. Come, sing a song with me. Come, sing a song with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Well, we sing it. Why don't we sing it then? I had an extra verse in there. Why don't we sing this? Come, share a rose with me. Come, share a rose with me. Come, share a rose with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Please be seated. I have to talk to that guy who does the slides. In the 3rd and 4th centuries BCE in China, there was a time known as the Warring States period, a time when princes and warlords were often fighting over power and resources. The philosopher Junzi lived during this period. Junzi is considered the third of the great Confucian thinkers behind Confucius himself and Mencius. And perhaps influenced by his time, Junzi believed that human beings lacked an innate moral compass. But he also believed that human beings had the capacity through education, training, and contemplation to build a moral foundation, and that the human spirit could be oriented toward right action. In his writings, Junzi provided an exemplar of such change. Living in that same era was another great thinker and a great general known as Sun Tzu, who wrote The Art of War, a book that is still referred to in our time. One of Sun Tzu's best-known comments was, "To fight and conquer in all our battles is not supreme excellence. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting." Sun Tzu's methods of mediation are also highly regarded. They focus on preparation, knowing oneself, knowing one's opposite, through careful listening. In fact, Sun Tzu and his followers spent much, much more time working for peace than ever spent in battle. And so, Junzi, the philosopher, told a story of Sun Tzu, also a philosopher, and his followers who would journey around the various states helping people settle their differences, arguing against wanton attack and pleading for the suppression of arms so that the people might be saved from the continual depravity of war. To this end, Sun Tzu and his gang interviewed kings and warriors and lectured the merchant class and the common people, nowhere meeting with any great response or success. Constantly rebuffed, but never discouraged, they persisted obstinately in their task, till princes and commoners alike grew weary of listening to them. Undeterred, they continued to force themselves upon the people's attention. And as difficult and as arduous as this work was, it must be confessed that what they did on behalf of others was unlimited, while what they asked for themselves was just enough rice to get by. Never for a moment did they forget what they had vowed to do for all people under heaven. And hungry though they were, they never rested either by day or night, believing indeed that the lives of those not aligned to the common good must be lives lived without hope. Let's join in singing our centering hymn, Voice Still and Small. It's number 352 in your gray hymnal. Words will also be on your screen. What is it? 391. 391. This guy. We'll sing it through just once. Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing. Our lives are interrupted, sometimes for joy and sometimes for sorrow, often unexpectedly. When we gather here together, we have an opportunity to share those ups and downs, those parts of our lives that perhaps we can't share in other places. I want to bring to you the sadness of the passing of Tom Eddy, who passed on Monday this past week, leaving his lovely wife, Ray, just bereft. Fortunately, family arrived very quickly. But we think about Tom and we think about Ray as we go about our lives. If you have a joy or a sorrow that you'd like to share, I hope you'll raise your hand. I'll bring you the microphone. Tell us your name and briefly what's in your heart, joys and sorrows.
Hi, I'm Harriet Lancaster. For those who don't know me, I wanted to thank everyone in the congregation for all the support and help they gave me this year since Jim's death. I'm going back up to Maryland next Sunday, but I'll be back by the end of October. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Harriet. And I know your family has been a big support as well.
Hi, I'm Marcia Gunther, and last year I started babysitting for my 3-year-old grandson, and there was a routine at night that I found out spur of the moment, and it was 3 books, 1 song, turn on the white sound, and tuck him into bed. So I was totally surprised with the song, and I started singing, "Come Sing a Song with Me." And my grandson, 3 years old, loved it because it has so many repeats in it. And so for several weeks, several months, that's our song. So thank you for enlightening me and bringing me joy today.
Absolutely. Sometimes it has more repeats than you expect it to have.
I'm Laura Litton, and I'm another one who's getting ready to leave for the season. And I want to thank you all for being here in so many wonderful ways inside the community and outside the community. And it's really been a center of gravity and so much care and love and affection and good humor. And I don't want to leave without thanking you all for being here.
Anyone else?
I just want to join the ranks of rats deserting a sinking ship, but
We're not sinking.
This is not a sinking ship. However, we're going to a wonderful UU congregation in Rockland, Maine, and we will bring your greetings, but we will miss each of you here.
Thanks, Eleanor. Anyone else? With all those joys and sorrow of those departing, let's settle ourselves into a time of meditation. Spirit of life, we awaken each day to a choice of how to balance our hopes and fears. We can choose, out of fear, to build fortresses, believing perhaps too quickly that the evil without is greater than the evil within. We can be overcome by the magnitude and numbing repetitiveness of events unfolding in the media and choose despair. We can succumb to the liberal tendency of sophisticated resignation and cynical chic, separating ourselves from the world with a shrug of futility. Let us awaken instead to the possibility of love, mind, body, spirit, all saving, all redeeming love. Let us awaken to the saving gift of forgiveness, where we can, in a single breath, free ourselves and free another. Let us awaken to savor the world of abundance and possibility, a world that awaits just beyond the self-imposed limits of our imagination. Let us awaken to the blessings of acceptance, expressed in a simple saving mantra. Want what we have. Do what we can. Be who we are. Let's share some moments in silence.
Perhaps I'll look back on this difficult time we're suffering through and remember that in January of 2022, I discovered Wordle right after it had been released. And I got up in the morning, and on the mornings that I solved the puzzle quickly and shared my score, I hate to admit that sometimes that was the highlight of my day. Tried to keep busy, but I spent most days trying to avoid the news. As Washington Post writer Amanda Ripley put it, I wanted to stay informed about the world, but not bludgeoned into fatalism. I was feeling pretty bludgeoned. I was raised to be a rise and shine kind of person, but I was aware more and more that the attack on the Capitol 1 year earlier had lowered my spirits to a degree that scared me. My personal life chugged along below the surface with its familiar cheerfulness, but gloom was creeping in, and it troubled me. On June 24th, 2022, I was sitting in my older sister's sunroom when the Supreme Court decision about Roe versus Wade came down, and I wept. My sister, a conservative, chastised me for being dramatic and trying to ruin the day. That moment might have been my lowest point. You know, the point at which you push off the bottom and start rising again. I think anger had a lot to do with it. One of the hardest parts of trying to regain my equilibrium was that Florida politics, right on my doorstep, began to horrify me over and over. And there was a second villain in Tallahassee to follow the bully who had left the White House. So, doesn't the word hope seem kind of flimsy? Dare I say, weak? Amanda Ripley says that hope is more like a muscle than an emotion. It's a cognitive skill, she says, one that helps people reject the status quo and visualize a better way. I like that. Václav Havel, the former president of the Czech Republic, believed that hope was a state of mind and a dimension of the soul, an orientation of the spirit. He said that hope is definitely not the same as optimism, an observation that I needed to hear because I've always equated the two. Hope, unlike optimism, is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that some things make sense and gives us the strength to live and continually to try new things, even in conditions that seem hopeless. Yes, says New York Times writer Nicholas Kristof, our nation is a mess. But, he went on to say, overlapping catastrophes have also created conditions that may finally let us extricate ourselves from the mire. The grim awareness of national failures may be a necessary prelude to fixing our country. With conscious effort and the listening capacity of a smart, thoughtful spouse, I have regrouped since that low point in January of 2022. I got tired of being fearful. I got tired of wishing a huge asteroid would end it all quickly. I got tired of calling politicians ugly names. I got tired of seething every time a truck passed me waving an American flag. Worst of all, I got tired of the creeping thought that my grandchildren shouldn't have children. I read a quote a few months back that I found myself repeating to others. It goes, bad things don't go away until they've taught us the lessons that we needed to learn. Marian Wright Edelman, the founder of the Children's Defense Fund, says it another way. She contends that the former president was the perfect opposition to have because he represents the implosion of the American dream, and we can't go down his road much farther. So perhaps, As Christoph conjectures, today's national pain may cause us to embrace progressive change that would be impossible in cheerier times. Although skeptics say that too much permanent damage has been done, trauma drives change. The broad recognition by most Americans that America has taken a wrong path gives me the most courage. Hope right now in America is bloodied and battered, but this is the kind of hope that is successful, says Cory Booker. It's hope that has lost its naivete. Christoph is right to observe that history does not unfold smoothly. Policies do not evolve gradually. Rather, they develop like animal species through what evolutionary biologists call punctuated equilibrium, long periods of stasis and short bouts of intense upheaval. The very least you can do in your life is figure out what you hope for. And the most you can do is live inside that hope, contends author Barbara Kingsolver. I choose to live inside hope. Hope is the light on the surface of the water. The water is dark and deep.
Are you feeling a little down these days too? Maybe just a little angry? Let me ask you a couple of basic, and I mean real basic, questions. Do you believe that people are worthy of being treated with dignity and respect? Do you want to see the world move towards greater justice, equity, and peace? Well then, if your answer was in the affirmative, you have there the beginnings of what you need for a theology of hope. Reconnecting with those things that are core to your sense of yourself in the world is the first critical step. Now, as Catherine quoted Václav Havel earlier, hope shouldn't be confused with optimism, or some naive, wishful thinking. Havel himself experienced some harsh realities in his life and endured significant trials, but still maintained an attitude of hope. Hope, in fact, requires us to look clearly at what's going on in the world and then look deep inside to those things we believe are fundamental, and then, like Sun Tzu in our story, live into those beliefs. Not because by doing so they will come immediately to fruition, but because by doing so we remain connected to what we believe is right and good and which serves something greater than ourselves. As Catherine shared, we nurture hope when we live inside it. Each of us here, I believe, has a moral compass, a place from which we yearn for what is right and good, a center from which we are buoyed when we act or experience acts of justice and compassion, a center that feels disturbed when our deepest values are threatened, when we fail to act in line with our best selves or become aware of acts of greed or violence or hatred. So let me back off and talk a little bit about theology. I've been questioned more than once since I've been here how this Unitarian Universalist tradition, this institution that encourages the free and responsible search for truth and meaning among its congregation and its members, can have a theology. First of all, I acknowledge that some folks here find it hard to get past that word, theology, since by an old narrow definition it is the study of the nature of God, theos. And God knows that many you use don't believe in God, or at least the God that is depicted in Scripture in various interpretations of Scripture. Better that we understand and accept the broader and more widely recognized definition of theology as the study of religious beliefs and theory as they are developed systematically, a belief system. And still, you might ask, how can this amalgam of belief systems that we hold as Unitarian Universalists ever come together as a unified theology? We have folks who lean in varying degrees towards Christianity, or Buddhism, or Judaism, or Islam, or Hinduism, or Taoism. And we have a strong core of humanists who also apply modifiers to more clearly describe their particular leanings, from secular to religious, and even to mystical humanists like me. The point of all this is that even those who say they are non-believers, if they are here, have some system of belief or understanding, however felt or articulated, that is in some way affirmed by being here, by being part of this community. As Unitarian Universalists, we honor those varying systems of belief and even hold you close when, for some reason, through experience or learning, your belief system changes and shifts. And together, we look for those important values that provide common ground. In seminary, we take courses that are actually called systematics, where we learn about major religions using a lens of some basic questions that all belief systems try to answer. We ask first, what is at the center of a particular worldview? Is there a God? If so, what is its nature? If not, what is it that is of ultimate concern? Next, we might want to understand how someone comes to those central beliefs. What is the source of truth? What is the balance of faith and reason, of felt experience and hard facts? Are they separate spheres or are they compatible? Then we need to look at the nature of humanity. Are we inherently sinful creatures? Are we all born good? Or is the reality somewhere in between? And how do you describe the problem of evil? Is evil a force in the world, in opposition to God or the good? Is there evil in nature? Or is evil perhaps a function of human selfishness and greed? What about death and our ultimate destiny? Is there heaven? Is there a hell? How would one describe salvation? Is there something after this life? What would it be like? Is there a reckoning to come? Finally, what about morality and ethics? How do the beliefs that get outlined in all these other areas inform our behavior? How do we make decisions? How do we determine what is right and, perhaps more important, what becomes unacceptable behavior? In seminary, after we've just studied these questions as they relate to the major traditions, we are challenged to use these tools, these questions, and clearly those new and constantly unfolding truths in favor of ancient worldviews seems unwise at best. Therefore, a liberal theology is constantly working to reflect the realities of the times and incorporate new truths that are discovered about the universe and about the nature of human beings, and that the human capacity for reason must be brought to bear in critical examination of the sources of our beliefs, of our faith. Unitarians and Universalists, in establishing their identities back in the late 18th century, were part of this new liberal religious movement. The Universalists, while centering a loving God, justified their faith in a universal salvation through a critical analysis of the texts. The Unitarian worldview, while still primarily Christian, began to center their thinking in an ideal of human progress, giving voice to the supreme dignity of human nature and advocating for the use of the free mind and our God-given ability to reason. Once they made their break from more orthodox Christian viewpoint and expressed the view that new revelations might be found not only within Scripture but also from other sources, liberal theology was set free. From those early and reluctant pioneers to the next generation that sparked new strange and liberal thought in transcendentalism and the Free Religious Association, who pushed for more decisive separation from irrational doctrines and traditional authorities. The developing liberal theologies were more and more given to an overt expression of hope and optimism, with a new sense of freedom that came with westward expansion, with steady advances in science, and with the Industrial Revolution changing the way people lived, especially the lives of those more affluent. By the end of the 19th century, this common Unitarian affirmation, written by James Freeman Clarke, included a stated belief in the progress of mankind onwards and upwards forever. Onwards and upwards forever. Hope is one thing. As we've said, unfettered optimism in the face of human reality is another. Somewhere during that time, our Unitarian and Universalist traditions lost their humility. It lost a balance in those essential ingredients of a well-put-together theology, and in doing so, failed to see the price that humanity was paying for the great challenges that were occurring. Somehow overlooking, at least in theological terms, the evils contained in a damaging civil war, the displacement of native peoples, the growing differential in wealth, and the changing political climate. And while this optimistic liberal theology radiated out to be accepted by many other traditions in the late 19th and early 20th century, it was not prepared for the challenges of the postmodern world after World War I, the challenges of liberation theology with its focus on the poor and disadvantaged, on the early challenges of racism, or a too narrow focus on individualism. And our tradition has struggled to adequately counter the new evangelical fervor that has dominated America's religious landscape and political reality. So, if there is hope to be had and expressed in terms of our varied worldviews and in a liberal theology, that has enough teeth to make a difference in our lives and in the world, where do we find it? I think we begin right here, within a loving community of supportive people who are on a similar journey, who share the same fears and anxieties. It is far easier to lose hope if you are isolated and alone. Here in the company of others, we can express our joy at positive action, or we can express our outrage at behavior that goes against what we perceive as the common good. Here in communion with each other, we can reconnect with our highest ideals and recalibrate our moral compasses. Here we nurture the ideal of love as central to our task as human beings. I think hope also remains in the freedom of thought and the spirit of inquiry that our liberal tradition believes will carry us forward to new truths and new and more viable perspectives about the world, though we must always temper our intellectual leanings with a strong dose of humility. With our free minds, we can see with clear eyes through the blaring news on our radios and televisions and know that in any given moment, the vast majority of the people on this earth are living their lives to the best of their ability, showing compassion to family and friend, struggling to do what they believe is right. William Schultz, whose quote you see on the back of your order of service often, has served as president of our Unitarian Universalist movement, executive director of Amnesty International, and as president of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. And he has seen firsthand both the absolute worst of what humanity can do and some of its shimmering victories of the heart. In spite of the horrors he has seen in the state of the world today, he gives the odds at 60-40 in favor of hope. It's not what we might want to hear, but he also suggests that we won't even get to that 60% if we aren't working for it as a team. Nonetheless, Bill Schultz will take the odds, and so will I. Finally, if there's one thing that will allow us to get to a theology of hope, is that we fully embrace with our whole selves the idea of interdependence and place humanity not at the center of this unfolding universe, but as part of a greater whole to which we are both indebted and responsible. The idea of the earth as an intricate and interdependent system must finally come to the fore as the overriding and ultimate concern of our liberal faith, whether or not we see this interdependent web as the work of God or the result of chance. This we must preach and teach. The ethicist Daniel McGuire has posited the notion that the fundamental moral experience of humankind is our experience of ourselves in this earthly home and in this universe. From this clear and humble understanding, McGuire believes we can develop an ethical system that is in harmony with the natural world and with all the creatures that inhabit it. Václav Havel talked about this shift, that we need to move out of ourselves and into awareness of being part of something bigger. He writes, "Hope in this deep and powerful sense is not the same as a joy that things are going well, or a willingness to invest in enterprises that are obviously headed for early success, but rather an ability to work for something because it is good, not just because it stands a chance to succeed." We are in the middle of trying times that make us gnash our teeth, shake our heads, and maybe even scream into the pillow every once in a while. But if anyone ever promised us a life free from fear and struggle, they were lying. Each and every day provides us with reasons to despair, and each and every day provides us with reasons to cheer. A theology, however, that teaches us a sense of perspective, that encourages us to arise above the everyday, that asks us to commit to one another in love, that challenges us to think about possibilities, that asks us to consider our own capacities and look beyond ourselves to engage in the struggle for a moral, just, and peaceful society in solidarity with the earth and all its people. That is a theology of hope. Living within that hope is our everyday challenge. So may it be.
As we take time to reflect on today's words and music, let's also take time to show our gratitude for this community and all that it does. The morning's offering will be gratefully received.
Spent so many seasons lost inside my mind, lost inside my mind. Like a message in a bottle I thought nobody would find, that nobody would find. I've been drifting, I've been dreaming I would land upon the shore, to a haven, to a harbor that felt so far before. Well, today, what felt so far away feels a little closer. For today, it feels a little closer. How long these days of darkness at the bottom of a well, the old familiar well. Sitting heavy with these secrets and nobody to tell, nobody to tell. High above, a streak of sunlight and a wall too tall to climb. All the reaching, all the wanting, just to tumble every time. But today, what felt so far away feels a little closer. For today, it feels a little closer. The days carry on. The clouds come rolling in and then they're gone. As the days keep coming on, the midnight sky turns to dawn. Today, what felt so far away feels a little closer. Today, it feels a little closer, a little closer. It feels a little closer, a little closer. It feels a little closer.
That was delightful, Abby. Hearing your voice was just a real treat today. I can't even imagine playing a piano and singing at the same time. I can't do either. We have a couple of announcements for our congregational life. And the first one is, we haven't quite made it to supporting 150 students with our weekend meals project. And I know this is a real source of pride here, and it's been worked for very hard. We haven't quite made it yet, so if you haven't contributed, maybe you'll think about pushing it over the top so we have fed 150 students during the coming school year. The second one, nice announcement. The powerful exhibit of copper sculptures by Lino Nesta will close today, and there's going to be a wine and cheese reception in the foyer after the service. I hope you'll join Lino's wife, Jill, and the gallery committee as we honor Lino's work. And lastly, oh boy, there's a First Friday coming up this week, and it happens to fall on, Cinco de Mayo. So First Friday is always an all-congregational social gathering where you bring an hors d'oeuvre to share and something to drink and meet with your fellow UUs. Since it's Cinco de Mayo, wow, bring a friend, let's celebrate and be colorful.
Let me add, too, that there is a parent meeting after the parent gathering after the service in Thomas Hall. So those of you who are in the audience anywhere, please join us about 10, 15 minutes down the hall.
And now let's rise as you are willing and able and join in our closing hymn, There Is More Love, number 95 in the gray hymnal. We'll sing the verse about hope last.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. Each day, the first day. Each day, a life. Each morning, we must hold out the chalice of our being to receive, to carry, to give back. It must be held out empty, for the past must only be reflected in its polish, its shape, its capacity. Go in peace. Go in love. Have a wonderful day.